He had a new interest, neurology, the study of nervous diseases. And he made a very canny move, travelling to the centre of this burgeoning science, an intellectual hotspot. This is Salpêtrière. In Freud's day, a kind of medical poorhouse, a bleak dumping ground for some 5,000 women, many of whom were diagnosed as hysterical.
Hysteria, from the Greek word for womb, was a mysterious condition that was thought to afflict women from the ancient world onwards. Really, it was just a catch-all diagnosis for all kinds of nervous symptoms, from fits and paralysis to anxiety and headaches. And for centuries, it was a dangerous tool in the hands of male doctors who were trigger-happy in diagnosing women as hysterical, to the point where they incarcerated perfectly sane individuals in hospitals and asylums.
Freud came to Salpêtrière to study with the preeminent pioneer of neurology, Jean-Martin Charcot. Having discovered that some nervous conditions like multiple sclerosis were the result of lesions on the brain, Charcot turned his attention to the mysteries of hysteria.
Charcot approaches hysteria more scientifically and more seriously and doesn't think of it as simply a woman's ailment. And he sees distinct phases. He talks about the epileptoid phase, a tonic phase, a fit. And the fit was epileptic rigidity. He then talks about clonic phase, or the clown phase, where these huge thrashing movements take place.
So he's identified these different phases. What kinds of methods is he using to kind of further his scientific inquiry?
Well, Charcot uses hypnosis to diagnose hysteria. He thinks that if women are susceptible and men are susceptible to hypnosis, that's probably a sign that they do have hysteria. But he also uses hypnosis in his great public lectures, to which, all of Paris comes. Getting a ticket to go to one of Charcot's public lectures is like going to the best play in London.
So the patients were on display in these public lectures?
The patients were on display. And under hypnosis, they will begin to walk, and they will talk, and they will effectively do what the medic asks of them.
So we know that Freud's there, he's in the audience, he's one of Charcot's pupils. Do we know what kind of an impact this had on Freud?
Well, I think it has an immense impact. He begins to see that there are different forms of thinking and activity going on in the human mind simultaneously. And that there are whole areas of the human mind that are there ready to be plumbed.
Freud returned to Vienna aged 29, full of new ideas and career plans.
But things certainly weren't easy for Freud. When he first opened his practice in this apartment block in 1886, business was depressingly slow. Sometimes he couldn't even afford a cab to make house calls, and he could only marry Martha in the same year thanks to gifts and loans from friends.
One of Freud's principal benefactors was the eminent physician Joseph Breuer. Like Freud, Breuer was curious about the scientific mysteries of hysteria. One of his old patients stood out.
Breuer had treated a highly intelligent young woman from an affluent Jewish family called Bertha Pappenheim, giving her the pseudonym Anna O.
She experienced hallucinations and suffered from partial paralysis. At times, she could only speak English. She appeared to have a split personality.
Now, Anna's case really fascinated Freud, partly because of her extreme symptoms, but also because of the innovative way that Breuer treated her.
During Breuer's consultations, Anna fell into a state of hypnosis and revealed melancholic details of her personal history.
The talking revived significant or painful memories of past events that had been forgotten or somehow blocked up and suppressed.
Breuer found that he could trace Anna's numerous symptoms back to original traumas.
When Anna showed an aversion to drinking water, Breuer linked it back to her seeing a dog being allowed to drink out of the glass of its owner. But once she expressed her submerged disgust, her hydrophobia vanished.
Freud realised that Breuer might have stumbled upon not just an explanation, but a cure for hysteria. Working from new, larger premises at number 19 Berggasse, he began to apply Breuer's cathartic treatment to his own neurotic patients.
But Freud had a problem. He just couldn't hypnotise all of his patients. So he smartly turned a failing into a virtue and developed his own version of a talking therapy. Freud asked his patients to lie on this couch while he sat here behind them out of sight. He encouraged them to say whatever came into their minds, almost as if they were talking to themselves.
He proved to be an alert listener, systematically sifting through and probing his patients' memories. Interpreting their confessions rapidly, intuitively, he attempted to unlock what was being suppressed.
Freud gave his new free association method a new name. He took the ancient Greek word for mind or life breath, psyche, and added to it a robust scientific term, analyze. Psychoanalysis was born.
In 1895, Breuer and Freud published their findings in a landmark book, Studies on Hysteria.
Freud was keen to find a single unifying reason for hysteria neurosis, to offer their theory a kind of breakthrough moment. And he started to see sex as a central issue.
The more cautious Breuer disagreed, but another friend proved far more receptive, the physician Wilhelm Fliess.
Sexual morality had long been framed by religion, and by and large had been unremittingly repressive for centuries. But Fliess was one of a growing number of medical researchers who embarked on a scientific study of sexual identity and behaviour, unconstrained by orthodox moral judgments and what was generally considered to be perversion.
Encouraged by the open-minded Fliess, Freud began to hone his ideas about hysteria and sexual issues. In April 1896, he went to read a paper to the Viennese Society for Psychiatry and Neurology.
He described the job of treating patients with hysteria in epic terms, as if he were an explorer archaeologist, sifting through the remains of an ancient ruined city, trying to find clues and evidence. Imagine that an explorer arrives in a little-known region where his interest is aroused by an expanse of ruins, with remains of walls, fragments of columns, and with...
Freud claimed to have found a singular cause in all his neurotic cases, something he likened to discovering the source of the Nile.
His daring theory, the seduction theory, was that all neuroses were the result of some kind of sexual abuse in childhood, typically by the father. But rather than the glory that he was expecting, the paper was met with bewilderment and scepticism. One eminent neurologist in the audience dismissed it as a scientific fairy tale.
This frosty reception just enhanced Freud's view that he was an embattled pioneer, tackling taboo subjects. However, in little more than a year, even he would concede that his seduction theory was fatally flawed. Hysteria was so widespread that to imagine so many men were paedophilic abusers was highly implausible. With hysteria afflicting Freud's own family, the idea that his father Jacob could also be guilty was the final straw. Other speculations, however, would prove far more enduring. At the heart of Freud's thinking was how and why discomforting past thoughts could become repressed, only to be woven into the symptoms and psychic knots of everyday life. Freud believed that the unconscious mind held the key.
The unconscious mind had been imagined and debated right across the human experience for many centuries, but Freud was one of the first to take a really systematic approach, to try to add precision to the perceptions of the unconscious mind.